Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. You have one of your co-hosts here today, Caitlin Johnson. Sophia's off interviewing new midwives with her new pregnancy and can't be with us here today, but I'm very excited to have another member of double duo gals that are making waves in the food industry. That we got pitched just kind of a powerhouse. I was doing a little research on you and Tara today, Natalie, and I was like, wow, they are making waves. So I'm very privileged to have Natalie here with me today, and I'd love for you to introduce yourself, Natalie. Tell us a little bit about your business and what you're doing with Discover Ag.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us on. It is always fun to jump on other people's podcasts and get to have, podcast conversations. It's obviously something we're both passionate about. So really looking forward to today. Hello, dear listeners. As introduced, my name's Natalie, and I am a cattle rancher, which is kind of fun because a lot of people think of agriculture and they always think of an older male. And it is, a male-dominated industry, but there's a lot of women behind, your food grown, a lot of women on farms and ranches. So it's always fun to lend a female voice to the agriculture industry, which is the goal, as you mentioned, of Tara and My's podcast, Discover Ag. Every Thursday, we cover the top four, usually four. Sometimes we get carried away and we'll throw in five, but usually it's the top four kind of news pieces. And that we're not just talking like traditional media, like we will pull from, publications or websites, et cetera. But for the most part, we are usually covering a reel that went viral, a TikTok that went viral, a carousel post that seems to be being shared, frequently. So we're covering all those news pieces that go viral each week and then kind of lending our voice to them as two females in the agriculture industry. So my husband and I have a cattle ranch here in Nebraska. I kind of skipped over that part. I'm sorry. Tara and her husband have a dairy farm in New Mexico. And I think the genesis of our podcast, we usually say, was that a lot of these conversations that were taking place in, Western culture, food, agriculture were from outside voices, which is great. People care about where their food comes from, and people have questions about that. And, people lead those conversations, but we felt like, why not add two voices that is within from the industry to kind of talk about those topics as well. And so that's what we do every Thursday, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful thing to be in a time and age where you can impact the public conversation about something, that we would even consider like reels that go viral part of newsworthiness. But honestly, most people spend more time on social media than they do looking at actual news, TV shows, publications like online media and newspapers, because not much is in print anymore. So it is such a fast moving industry. And it often engenders a lot of really extreme views and extreme voices. And I think sometimes that's helpful, and sometimes that's like tearing away at and causing distrust in some systems that are working very well, and we just only hear about the bad things. And I'm sure that you guys every single day are battling a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, it's really crazy. To touch on two of the things you said, absolutely wild nowadays that we are going to social media for our news. I mean, it has always been where we've gone for like entertainment and obviously connection. But now a majority, especially generations below us, I'm millennial, 38, everyone coming behind us, they're going there for their news and their information. And so it really is kind of a wild world to think that we need to, as you said, address or take a reel that is laced in a lot of misinformation as fact for a lot of people, and take it seriously and address it. So yeah, it's really wild. And to your second point, it is kind of unfortunate. Extremism is what wins on social media. I mean, there are actual studies that show statistically that the more negative emotion you can evoke in a watcher, right? So anger, fear, anxiety, the more apt that content is to go viral, which is why you see a lot of on the podcast, we end up just kind of umbrelling it under the term fear mongering. But you'll see a lot of fear mongering around the food system, who's growing your food, how your food's being grown. And those are the content that goes viral, not, the clip that's like actually talking about the boring truth behind some of the sound bites and headlines. So it makes for a lot of things to cover on our podcast, which is good. We're never like searching for information. We're like, oh, yet again, here we are, another thing to cover. And yeah, it is at the end of the day, like you said, rewarding to be able to lend our voice, especially in the podcasting form where you can actually have a long conversation. You're not trying to fit information to 9-second reel or TikTok. So it is rewarding and we absolutely enjoy it.
I love that. So tell me a little bit about something that would be surprising to a listener about life on a cattle ranch, like maybe something about actually living that life or something they might be surprised about the product that you're churning out. I went to your website and saw frozen genetics and I was like, that's click worthy. So that was something I wasn't expecting when I heard cattle rancher. So you could talk about that or anything else, but like what would be surprising to people?
Yeah, such a great question. And honestly, one you're going to challenge me to answer because what you know is what you know, right? And I actually grew up in the agriculture industry. I grew up on a cattle ranch in Southwest Montana. So I'm a Nebraska transplant, but I am still, I don't know if there's any Husker fans out there, but go Big Red. I'm still, I love my new home, the new state of Nebraska. But yeah, rural communities, ranching, cattle, that's kind of this Western way of life is all I've really ever known. And it's funny when, you go off to college and you leave kind of quote unquote the industry. That's when you realize, oh, like my upbringing was maybe a little bit different than other people's upbringing. And, maybe some of the information I have when it comes to the food system, not everyone is privy to or has seen and understand. And so it's always such a challenging question because, everything that I think is normal is what you guys all think is absolutely wild. But I will share this because I think often when, especially as a dietitian, you probably have a lot of people tuning in that are, very in tune with proteins, animal foods, just, living a healthy lifestyle, healthy diet in general. One thing that I think happens quite a bit when in the animal protein discussion is they all get kind of lumped into this same category together. And when it comes to the production side, so the growing of the animals, beef is very, very different than poultry or pork. Both of those industries, not to pick on them, but both of those industries are vertically integrated. And what that means in a much simpler terms is that we'll take Tyson, for example. It's a very well-known chicken brand. Tyson actually owns the animal from start to end. And a lot of times those farmers are actually contract growers. So they are being paid by Tyson, to lend the expertise, the animal welfare and care for the animals, but there's no ownership. And poultry can often be set up the same way. So you could use a big name like Smithfield, right? A lot of people know that name. So those industries are vertically integrated and beef is absolutely not. It is a very different system. It changes ownership about average 3 to 5 times before it gets to, the end of the plate. So the harvesting facility, and majority of ownership has, families like mine and my husband. So the animals will start out on a ranch like ours, then they'll get sold typically to a backgrounder, then they'll get sold to the feedlot, and then the feedlot sells to the harvesting. So you hear a lot about bigger names in the beef industry when it comes to packing plants, like you'll hear the Big Four, JBS, and a lot of, kind of a chokehold, a monopoly there. But other than that, the beef industry really is owned by families. So it's very, very different setup when it comes to growing of the animals.
And with that, do you have more control over what that process looks like, or are you strictly regulated in what that process looks like?
No, so we are not answering to anyone. My husband and I, it is our ranch, our animals. It's on our responsibility, to care for those animals in the proper way that they want to be bought into, the next step of the food system. That's not to say that you can apply for certain regulations. So, there are I'm trying to think of a couple off the top of my head, but there are different non-hormone would one we be able to go into that we could apply for, that we are submitting paperwork, we are submitting the information to have that certification on our beef when we go to sell. But you do not have to do that in order to sell beef. Just, on average, I guess.
That's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know the difference between even the term vertical.
Yep.
Did you say it's vertical versus non-vertical?
They just call it vertically integrated. So the ownership will be one, I guess vertically,
it's an up
top
and down.
to bottom, single ownership. And then, the beef industry, like I said, you have multiple ownerships depending on where the animal is at in the phase of its life.
So interesting.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear like buzzwords in the nutrition industry around cattle, I feel if Tara was here, maybe we could talk a little bit more about the milk and dairy side of it. But from the growth perspective and husbandry of the animals, I feel like people are either interested in the percentage of fat, or they're interested in hearing that it was grass-fed or grass-finished. But other than that, and maybe hearing the word organic being thrown around, the end consumer, if they're just shopping at a grocery store, really doesn't seem to have a lot of choice. Would you agree with that statement? Or do you have a way to kind of clarify what else we could maybe be looking for as we're consuming?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always start with, so there's like a spectrum, right, when it comes to sourcing and shopping for your food. And I think a really good question to ask yourself as a consumer at the beginning of that spectrum is, what do I actually care about? Because that can lead you to the right path of then how to source your beef and what to look for, and essentially make that extra premium, like what you want to pay for. And when I break it down like simplistically, I always start with, if you absolutely are very, very interested in knowing, the minute details of how the animal was cared for, antibiotics given, administered, what the feed looks like, you want that in-depth information when it comes to your beef. The best route is a direct-to-consumer option if you have that means. That could mean like a farmer's market. It could mean just online. The wonderful thing about today's society is there are a lot of farmers and ranchers who are able to create a website for themselves and now ship, whether it's locally for their communities or even nationwide. There are a lot of, you can go through the process to be able to ship across state lines. And so a lot of ranchers are doing that. So it's nice that it doesn't require you, having to go to a farmer's market. If you're looking for that convenience, you can still shop directly from a farmer and maybe have it shipped to your house. So that's like the best direct way to have some of those questions answered directly from the person growing your food. Whereas you said, you're not trying to decipher, what does this label actually mean? Is it really grass-fed? Is it grass-finished? All of that. As you move down, I really simplify it, and some people can fight me on this or not, but a lot of the labels in grocery stores to me are greenwashing, and they're essentially familiar words, comforting words like all natural, family raised, some of these terms that, to your earlier question, are not actually being monitored by anyone, and are not, whether it's at the USDA or whatever level it is, there's no actual regulation where, my family is a family raised applying for this and someone's accepting it and it's the stamp of approval, et cetera. It is just a creative marketing term, words that as a consumer makes you feel like you're getting a better product. So if you're shopping just in the grocery store, like you already pointed out, the two things that I would look for, if organic is a regulated label that you could pay extra for. And then there is a difference between a grain finished animal and a grass finished animal. So if that is important to you, you want an animal that is not finished on grain, that's important to you that their entire diet was grass, then you can look for that grass finished. It needs to say finished label. But other than that, I really would not pay any extra money for beef beyond those two labels, because there isn't really anything extra just worth paying for. A lot of it is going to unfortunately be greenwashing. That's just tricking you into picking the beef package on the left over the beef package on the right.
Sophia and I are so proud to be sponsored by TempDrop. TempDrop is a fertility sensor that you wear on your arm while you sleep, and it has a companion app on your smartphone that you can sync those temperatures with each day. That way you can track your cycle and know your own body while you're tracking your fertility trying to conceive. This is an incredible tool. It's one of the first things I like to recommend to new clients. And if you're listening to this podcast and trying to conceive, consider yourself one and head over to tempdrop.com. One of the reasons why I love this brand and this company so much is how value driven they are. It was born out of a husband and wife trying to conceive and trying to figure out basal body temping and making it easier. And in alignment with that value of making this information more accessible, they have just decided to lower their price. And in a landscape where everything is getting more expensive, I love that this company is making a bold move to make this product and this technology more accessible to women. So the new base price of this model is $189. This is incredible. You can even use our code FFF10 to get 10% off this new lower price. So head to our show notes or to tempdrop.com, grab yourself your fertility monitor, choose the size that you need, throw that code into the checkout area, and get tracking your basal body temperature today. We are taking a break from the episode, and I want to chat with you a little bit about Fertility Cloud. If you've been told you need help ovulating, or you have PCOS and you're trying to figure out your next fertility step, I want to tell you about Fertility Cloud. They make fertility care simple, transparent, and affordable, especially when it comes to ovulation stimulation and ovulation induction treatments. Instead of waiting for months to see a fertility specialist or getting hit with surprise bills, Fertility Cloud lists every price clearly right on their website. You'll see exactly what you're getting into and exactly what it costs. No hidden clinic fees, no surprise invoices later. For my PCOS clients, this is huge. Their ovulation stimulation program can help jumpstart ovulation safely at home with physician guidance and medications delivered directly to you. You can do it all virtually, no driving to clinics or sitting in waiting rooms, and you can often even get appointments same day. If you're wondering, how do we do ultrasounds or what about lab draws? Don't worry, their concierge service helps determine where you can do that locally to you and coordinates with you on your behalf. It's just amazing. And here's the best part. If you're ready to take that next step, you can click the link in our show notes and get $50 off your first appointment. That means you get right in front of a fertility specialist for $115. That first visit gets you matched with a fertility doctor who actually understands your needs, and you'll walk away with a clear plan for your next cycle. So head to the link in our show notes, book your appointment, save $50 on your first Fertility Cloud visit, because fertility care should be transparent, affordable, and built for you. And do you have thoughts on the other side, just having spent so much time with a dairy farmer?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, Tara will say the same thing. So she'll say that I have heard her over and over and over again that milk quality has never been higher. They actually have very strict regulations. I have learned a lot about dairy. Listen to me. That I was not privy to before co-hosting a podcast with a dairy farmer, but they have very, very strict testing and regulations when that milk leaves the farm. So a lot of people ask Tara, like, where do you get your milk? And she says, I just buy the cheapest milk on the grocery store because I am confident that it is at like top notch quality. She'll get a lot of questions about raw milk, which we can dive into. And she did spend, she changed in college. So she spent like 25 of years of her life buying raw milk and has since now switched to, again, just the most conventional one. So there are a lot of, I'll kind of sum it up for both industries, the milk industry and the beef industry. There are a lot of checks and balances that go into place to make sure that you guys are getting a very safe product. And in my opinion, very nutritious. I think milk is a, very nutritious product to put in our body.
Absolutely.
And I think animal protein, beef, is an extremely nutritious product to put in your body. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things going on to make sure at different steps along the way, testing the milk, testing the beef, checking the animals to make sure you guys are getting a safe product in the grocery store.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you probably haven't listened to a number of our podcasts, but both Sophia and I would argue that if you had to like pick one of the most nutritious things that you could eat at a restaurant or even, something you could quickly cook at home, you're going to find beef at the top of the list for us. Like just throw some butter in a pan and fry a steak up, and you're going to be getting a lot of the most important nutrients that you need. You know, we're not going to find fiber there, and there are some nutrients that would be missing. That's why it's nice to have a diet that is broader than just being carnivore. But many of our ancestors did live large periods of time where animal was the only thing available to them and somehow managed to thrive and reproduce. So there's an argument that at the bare minimum, you should be able to sustain life for a good period of time on meat alone or other animal products. And I think sometimes dairy is poo-pooed upon in the integrative and functional medicine world, of which we hang out in a lot, because of this idea that it's inflammatory to everyone. And I would argue very heavily against a blanket statement like that. We're all individuals. And so sometimes we need to make individual adjustments due to our own history of eating, microbiota panel, the enzymes your body actually has. But even in the dairy world, there are so many options to customize things now with A2 milk and taking lactase enzymes if your trouble is with the sugar in it and you just can't break it down. There's so many options that it's worthwhile seeing if it's really an issue for you before you take away such a delightful thing like cheese, and B, cut out incredibly helpful and kind of gap bridging protein sources like yogurt.
Yep.
So I think it's very interesting to, of course, as we're talking to a cattle rancher or somebody that is very informed in the dairy industry, we're going to get an opinion that is colored with that, but it's not atypical for what our listeners are hearing anyway. We don't have a lot of vegetarian vegans that like listening to us because it's just simply not what we promote and understand is the most healthy diet available. And especially when we're talking about nourishing for fertility, like the nutrient density of your food is so important. It's so important.
Yeah, one thing that Tara and you will hear us say on our podcast quite frequently is food choice. So we actually aren't out to convert everyone to conventional milk or the beef. As you said, it's our opinions that, again, great for your diet. But we talk about that a lot, that we're actually it is such a wonderful privilege to be in a society where we do have options when it comes to the grocery store of different things to source for. And it's interesting when we cover some of these reels that will go viral, you'll see people in the comment section, talk about that, about how they can't, tolerate certain types of milks. And so they want it for, they go to oat milk for this reason or almond milk for this reason or whatever it is. And that's great to have choice. And I don't think, the solution is removing choice from people's diets as an answer. Tara and I always say that the goal of our podcast is to inform so that you're not influenced. So we want you to be able to scroll and see a reel and not just believe what we believe, but have a foundation to either question or understand. So you'll never hear us. Our goal isn't ever to preach our thought process to people. It is really to just bring information, discussion, dialogue, and also a lot of fun around these conversations that sometimes food feels so heavy nowadays, unfortunately. It's so conflicting and people are yelling at each other over the internet over what type of milk we should be growing and how much water is being used by this resource and et cetera. And it's just, our goal is to just provide from the industry conversation that is, digestible, understandable, and fun, because at the end of the day, to your point, everyone has, different bodies. Everyone has different values with their family. Everyone has different economic means. There's a lot of different factors that go into what you should put in your cupboards and fridge at the end of the day. And, our goal isn't to copy, paste, repeat what we do in our household.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we all look exactly the same,
yeah,
it's not really means for a diverse and healthy society. Tell me a little bit about how you guys joined forces and Discover Ag became a thing. Did you go to college together? Did you meet some random ag convention? Like, how did
So,
that
like
happen?
every good millennial relationship, we met online. We always joke
Okay.
that we like slid into each other's DMs. No, we both started sharing. So we actually have very similar stories as well. We both grew up in agriculture. Tara grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up on a cattle ranch. We both pursued degrees outside of the agriculture industry. I got my degree in pharmacy. So I was actually practicing as a full-time clinical pharmacist when I met my husband. I was living in a bigger city. I was near our family ranch, but I was not on it. I had no intentions of living on it. I had no intentions of having my income derived from it. I had no intentions of marrying a rancher, right? It's like, the same old story. Same thing for Tara. She's like, she went and got her degree in environmental science, came back to work in the dairy industry, but on the sustainability side of it. So she also was like, had no intention of, being quote unquote a dairy farmer. But as life has it, God has different plans. And we both ended up kind of marrying back into agriculture and being brought back to our farms and ranches. And so we both ended up kind of serendipitously sharing online. Again, very different sectors. I actually started a direct to consumer beef business. So that was kind of how I ended up sharing online. Again, coming from being a full-time pharmacist, like how do you get here? It was selling our family beef. Like, so I was creating, social media and sharing our story and, brand marketing, right? All of those different things. And that's how I got introduced into social media in general from like a business standpoint. And then how I came across Tara. So we were both kind of two females sharing in the agriculture space. She was sharing more in like dairy sustainability. But it was just at a time when, I don't know, it was 7-8 years ago. And I don't feel like, especially in smaller communities, it wasn't typical for two women, I guess, to leave a professional career to, quote unquote, influence online. And so I think there was a small group of women in agriculture that kind of found each other online, and we were both part of that community. And we would just talk and share and talk about how to grow online or what, just different things that I think we couldn't have conversations with our actual friend circles or family in real life. And then Tara and I I don't know, two souls are
Clicked.
drawn to each other, right? We just had a lot of similarities in our personalities. And I think out of that group, we just really, really connected. And so we just kind of became friends, and then friends turned into business partners. And then the podcast was born. So it's very serendipitous. But she is a wealth of knowledge and so fun to be around. So I always feel like I'm so privileged to be able to do what I love and then do it with someone that I love just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about in like the impact you want to have on the world. I loved hearing like we want to inform so that you're not influenced. I feel like there's almost like this anti-influencer swing of the fulcrum kind of back, right? Like we went way too far into this is the new marketing and nobody's trustworthy. And then there's actual professionals. For you, it's in agriculture. For Sophia and I, we actually have credentialing and education and additional training and professional responsibilities and code of ethics that we need to live by in our business. And there is this huge piece of misinformation, extreme politics on one side or the other, food and health being like major points of concern within an individual and culturally. It's incredibly impacting fiscal responsibility in where we subsidize, where we spend money, where we focus our efforts. Soph and I are trying to be on the like front end of that and impacting generations health wise, not just the getting pregnant and having a healthy pregnancy, but the health of the family that they're then investing in, growing the epigenetics, like how the genetics are turned on even in utero. Like there's a lot of education and impact. And it sounds to me like you and Tara have probably done a lot of kind of deep dives into what you want that to actually be. So I'd just love to hear a little bit of the philosophy and thought behind that.
Yeah, and that's so beautifully stated too, your guys' mission of not just the current, but generations to come. I think I connect with that because agriculture is such a generational industry. So it's the same thing for us, right? Like we're out here caring for our animals and our land, not just because it is, my husband and I's business and our lifestyle, but because our hope is, that it's the next generations and the next generations after that. So very beautiful testament. But yeah, I think going back to your question, 2020 kind of turned the world upside down, right? And I think one of the positive things that came out of that is people really did walk into the grocery stores for the first time, maybe in a little while, maybe in their lifetime, the first time, and have questions about, oh, wait, what do you mean the food's not here? What do you mean this is like part of the transportation process? Like, what do you mean there's this whole back end that was required that is kind of sensitive, right? Especially with different products and different things, to be able to get it here to the grocery store. And so, I reference that point of time a lot because I do think it was kind of this tilt in the scale of maybe before that, we had the wonderful world of consolidation a little bit where it was like, if you want to drink milk, you don't have to have a milk cow in your backyard, right? We had a small percentage, 2% of the population making food for 98% of the population. And that's a good thing because it required, people to be able to develop into urban settings and not have to have the responsibilities for the food. And I think that peak went a little bit too far. And then all of a sudden something happened and people were kind of drawn back to having questions and also maybe wanting some of that connection back for themselves in their life. And then I always reference like 2020, what was it, 2023 now? When RFK Jr., I'll never forget when he was giving his presidential speech of stepping down from the race. And I remember he devoted almost 30 minutes to talking about food and health. And I thought, this is so wild that we have a presidential elect that is choosing, he has, the whole nation tuning in right now, and he's using his platform to talk about food. And I just felt like something was going to come out of that speech. I just, I wouldn't have called it the Maha movement, but I just could tell that the scale was starting to tip even further, where people were going to even be coming out of 2020. And then this happening, there was going to be a real surge of people that had questions about their food and really wanted to be reconnected to it after being removed from it for so long. And so Tara and I, at the end of the day, we really, as farmers and ranchers who sometimes are in these kind of more remote areas, doing a job that a lot of people don't see every single day, it's just so important to us that people have a place to go when they have questions about their food. And then also just to serve as like a visual reminder that there are people behind food. There really are. I think in today's society, we have really got caught up in like factory farms or, like the scary part of food coming from corporations and kind of this removal of humanization from food. And it's like every single strawberry that is in the grocery store is hand planted. There isn't even a machine to hand plant strawberries. Like those are hand planted. Asparagus are all hand cut. Like there are people behind your every single day food. And we forget that. And it's just really important to me that people, when we can enter the grocery store and feel some negative emotions, anxious, worried, concerned. Food's a very emotional thing, right? It's important to me that people can pause, take a breath, and feel safer when it comes to their food system from maybe some of the content that Tara and I put out, whether it's through the podcast or hopefully, videos on our YouTube channel.
Interesting. I used to live in a town called Santa Maria in California, and its greatest export was strawberries. Like I literally, you could walk 100 yards from my house in 3 different directions and get a strawberry from a field. And so I saw it planted. I saw it picked. I mean, there were stands where you could get warm, fresh strawberries that were picked that morning. And it took so many humans out there in the field to pick those strawberries. And now I live in Kansas, where I'm looking at the little plastic containers and it says picked in Santa Maria, California. Yeah. It's like, I probably know one of those people that pick those strawberries. I used to treat a lot of them in my clinic. But yeah, I think that that's a really important piece, and that as humans that are responsible for huge pieces of this big agricultural system, even if it feels small, even if it feels like I'm just a family or I'm just a consumer, your choice, as you said earlier, matters. And it's kind of a vote. If you're choosing to purchase more produce, your grocery store is going to prioritize really good fresh produce that's there. If we just hang out in the center aisles, then your vote there is important too. So that's really beautifully put. Is there something that you would say to individuals who are like, they do walk in and they do have anxiety about their food choices. And you had a very wonderful and kind of simple message about beef and what to care about and what maybe not to care about. Do you have thoughts on other general sections of the grocery store, just based on your time interacting with other farmers or the ag industry at large? Things that you feel strongly about and maybe choices that you make for your family?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have, strong opinions about, grocery stores, the food system. But again, I don't ever feel it's my place to impart them on other people. When it comes to my family, I do believe in a whole food diet. So, to your point of, outside perimeters of the grocery store versus inside aisles of the grocery store, there's definitely a difference. I always say that sometimes, and right now, I feel like we as consumers are interchanging safe and nutritious, and you'll hear a lot of people be like, it's toxic, it's not, it's bad for you food, and it's like, well, yeah, it's not healthy, but it's still safe. And to the point of, the middle of the grocery store, I was actually just on a panel last week with two female farmers that grow the corn for PepsiCo. And one of them has grown the corn for PepsiCo for over 30 years. And she has, she's the matriarch of the family, and she has the generation coming behind her to grow. So the inside of the grocery store, yes, it's not necessarily like the healthiest to put in our bodies when we look at like a caloric standpoint, or, sugar versus fat, and the bliss point, and the conversation of the, Cheetos, and if that's what we should be having in our diet. But I don't want you as a consumer to get that confused with it being safe and it not also being grown by a person, because at the end of the day, it still came from a farm, and it is still passing regulations. And it was really actually interesting to hear that female farmer talk about all the different, again, checks and balances that PepsiCo has for her as a farmer in order for her corn to even be accepted at the drop-off point. So, big scope from a health standpoint, I definitely think there are better options in the grocery store of things you could be putting in your body. But from a safe component, from a dollar standpoint, I think the entire grocery store, again, I don't like when people call it toxic or unsafe or use these words that make it feel like it is dangerous to put in your body, because it is safe. It's just not healthy. And I think that needs to be like siloed out again in consumers' minds. So that they don't have that anxiety, can be making those purchases from a health standpoint instead of like a fear standpoint.
Absolutely. I also think having a perspective of food is more than just the component nutrients that it is. It's a time to come around a table and enjoy time with your family. It's nostalgia. Like, there are certain smells you smell when you walk into the kitchen when somebody's making something that was your favorite meal growing up. And what that incites within you is an experience. It's a different experience than eating, but I think it's important to see it as a larger context than just like its nutrition label or what some influencer is telling you is going to be really important and the only way you're ever going to lose the 10 pounds you're trying to lose. It's more than its separate nutrients added up and aggregated for us.
I am so glad you brought this up. So I am 2 weeks carnivore-ish. So we actually interviewed, sometimes we'll randomly do interviews on our podcast. Like I said, every Thursday it is Tara and I, just her and I, talking about 4 different headlines, topics essentially on the podcast. But every once in a while we sprinkle in interviews. Maybe it's like an expert on one of the articles we covered. So like we covered a reel that went viral that was talking about how the potatoes that McDonald's sources are like sprayed with all these toxic chemicals and just a bunch of different things. So we actually brought on a potato farmer we know, and he came in and talked about how like the chemical that was mentioned in the reel isn't even in use anymore. Like as a farmer, they can't even get it. So sometimes we bring on experts. Sometimes we bring on, just random interviews that we feel like fit that world of agriculture meets pop culture that we're living in. And one of our most recent interviews was someone who is very famous in the carnivore space. And so for the interview, I thought it was just me doing it. Tara bailed on me. But I thought, why not go carnivore before this experience so that I have some personal questions, some personal testimonies. Like this can be a different layer of a conversation if I actually go carnivore. But before that, I was never interested in it. I'm like, I think it's extremism, right? Like you just never would have caught me going carnivore unless I, again, had a reason to go.
Had a purpose. Mm-hmm.
And it has been the most eye-opening, crazy experience of my life going carnivore. And one thing, and I knew this before, but I had to go through this experience, I think, to really just like, I don't know, I guess for the teeth to sink in. But my husband and I cook together every night. Like, it is not his responsibility, it's not my responsibility. It's something we do together in the kitchen, spending time together. We really enjoy hosting. Like, I knew that before, but having these restrictions of carnivore where it's like my husband just goes grill and we're not even like spending time, it's like he threw something on the grill. We're not even in the kitchen together.
You're missing. Yeah.
We're not like preparing a meal together. Like, let's do this animal protein and pair it with this side. Like, there is like this whole emotional like love story that I realized I had with like good food, a fun time in the kitchen with friends and family has been completely removed from my life. And it's so important. It is so important. Like, there's one, everyone's like, will you stay carnivore? Because I have noticed some like things I think are better.
Beneficial.
But I was like, I'm like, it's not sustainable for me. I would never be able to do this because it has taken the joy and love I have for food in our family and completely removed it. Like, my kids, we sat down to have a movie the other night and I popped them a bowl of popcorn and I was like, it's ridiculous that I'm not having a bowl of popcorn with them. It's just these, I don't know, viewpoints we can get caught up in, these influencing trends we can get caught up in the food. It's just so wild how we can take them for verbatim and allow them to influence important things within the home and household and our family.
Absolutely. And it's preying upon major, especially female insecurities and huge hopes that we have. And particularly with our audience, you've never met a more motivated female than somebody who's trying to start a family and it's not working. She'll do anything.
Yep.
She'll dance outside naked in the moonlight if you tell her she will get a baby. Like, doesn't need to be absurd or extreme. But if it's different than what she did before and there's hope it could work, you could convince her with the right argument or scientific evidence. And I have a dear friend that ended up in a really difficult situation and went carnivore and had incredible benefits from it. But at the end of it, and this is a food influencer, a huge blogger in the space, her underlining comment was, this is not sustainable. I can't do this the rest of my life. I can't do it the rest of my life. Maybe I could go into phases of it if that's a need. And I think in the space of medical nutrition therapy, sometimes there are periods of time for things like that. We just went through a period of time. My dad has esophageal cancer, and there was a moment where liquid diet was necessary. Why? Because food wasn't going down his esophagus, right? So there is a time and a space for things like juice cleanses and carnivore diets, but it isn't the one thing that you've never heard of that's probably going to get you to that bucket of gold at the end of the rainbow. Like, we're talking about magic here. And really what we need to be talking about is biology and scientifically proven things. And a lot of times you need so much more moderation to impact somebody's very modern cultural schedule in life. That extremism just will not work for most people.
It's what wins online, which is why,
it's shiny.
The trends work.
Yeah. We're going to take a break from this episode to hear about one of our sponsors. You've probably heard me say this before, but preparing your body for pregnancy is not just about you. It's about both of you. Fertility is truly a team effort, and that's why I love the Fullwell Fertility Trio for Two. Fullwell was founded by a fellow registered dietitian and fertility expert, Ayla Barmer, and this bundle was designed to support both partners in the months leading up to conception. It combines their top-rated prenatal vitamin, omega-3 fish oil, and a fertility booster supplement that covers things like CoQ10, N-acetylcysteine, alpha-lipoic acid, and organic ashwagandha root extract. The nutrients here support overall egg quality, sperm health, fertility, and even your stress resilience. If your partner's semen analysis looks normal, Or if it's suboptimal and we need to improve things, nutrition plays a key role for things like sperm motility, count, and DNA quality. For women, these same nutrients help with ovulation, egg development, and healthy hormone balance, not to mention mitochondrial support, which is a huge piece of how your gametes mature and get ready to be that queen egg or that king sperm that make it to combining to form an embryo. These things are foundational for a strong, healthy pregnancy. I personally love that Fullwell's formulas are third-party tested, they're evidence-based, and made with doses that actually match what the research shows we need. No fluff, no underdosing. So if you're planning to start trying this winter or sometime in 2026, or you've been trying to conceive for a while, it's time to think about starting to nourish your bodies for what's ahead, or take a step up from your current protocol to one that is high quality. Head to fullwellfertility.com and use the code FFF20 for 20% off your order. That's FFF20 at checkout. I'll drop the link in the show notes for this specific fertility trio bundle and for Fullwell, along with this code FFF20. Give yourself and your future family the best foundation with Fullwell's fertility trio for two.
Sophia here with a little question for you. Anyone who knows me knows that I think Valentine's Day is honestly sort of like a forced, awkward holiday where you're like told to be romantic. Does it really feel good when someone is like told to do it? Anyway, here's the question though. Here's the question. How are you showing yourself a little extra love around Valentine's Day? That's my question for you. And an answer that I have for you today is with Cozy Earth. Because this Valentine's Day season, they're offering a buy one, get one pajama deal that you will not see any other time of year. And ladies, let me tell you, whether you are trying to conceive and you want something that makes you feel a little more comfortable and beautiful in the bedroom, whether you did conceive and you want something that's like soft and cozy to carry you through that first trimester when you're laying around, or whether you already had your baby and you're spending day after day breastfeeding and sitting in your house and you want something that isn't your husband's old work t-shirt with the hole in it, I cannot recommend Cozy Earth more highly. So show yourself a little extra love, get yourself a little piece of cozy, and use your code FFFBOGO to get these PJs for you and someone you love. Celebrate everyday love with comfort that makes the little moments count.
But yeah, I think, it kind of, you didn't say this, but for some reason I took this out of what you were talking about. And for me, in food, sometimes you feel like two truths can't be true at the same time. And they can be. Like two things can be true at the same time. And I get this a lot in food when it's like, how can, like, how do I say this? I can tell your listeners to be supportive of direct to consumer and shop at their local farmers market to be able to support the farmers and ranchers in their area. But it can also be true that I'm supportive of them going into the grocery store and buying the cheapest beef on the shelf. And those can be simultaneously two things that are true at the same time. And in the world of food, it's like we can't say that. You can't be an influencer that has a practicality or a moderation approach, because it's like you have to be siloed into one truth or the other. And usually they're on opposite ends of the spectrum. And I kind of was thinking of that when you talked about the juice cleanse. It's like I'm not a proponent for that, but every once in a while I might go on like a 3-day juice cleanse or something, or I might go on a 2-week trial of carnivore, right? And I just think in food, people they want you to, I don't know, subscribe to one belief and one belief only. It's like you're all maha or you can't be maha. It's like people are always like, well, what's your opinion on maha? And I'm like, well, some things are good and some things are terrible. And they're like, well, how can that be? You have to be for it or against it. And I just think when it comes to food, it's really, there's a lot of gray area in there. Like there's a lot of nuance when it comes to choices you make for your food. And I think there should be more fluidity at where you're at in your life. Are you trying to conceive? Are you post-menopause? Are you a poor college student? Like where are you at in your life? Though that spectrum, I guess, needs more fluidity and for people. And I think that's why I don't do well with people that are like, the influencer that's like, this is what worked for me, and that means everyone needs to do it now. Like, I'm just like, that doesn't work for my belief system.
Mm-hmm. No, and it won't actually physically work
Right.
for everyone. I have the person that's come to me who did keto and it solved all their problems. And I have the person that came to me with keto and they've never been more hungry, frustrated, irregular with their cycles, and constipated in their life. And it's not because one succeeded at the diet and one failed. It's that the diet didn't serve one of them where they were in their life.
Yep.
And arguably, it could be better for them when they're menopausal. It could be better for them. Intermittent fasting, not a huge proponent of, but in a fertility seeking woman, but I have friends and relatives I have recommended it to. It's because we are treating individuals. Your viewing of somebody online and what they're making and the HelloFresh package that cost $1 gazillion, but they got given to them because they're promoting it on Instagram. Like, what you're seeing really isn't real life. That person probably didn't
Eat it.
purchase that. And I think that Food Dollars is a really wonderful place we could maybe spend a few minutes chatting, because we have a lot of people listening to our podcast that are saving money for fertility treatments. They're seeing acupuncturists, paying for a dietitian, purchasing high quality prenatal supplements, and they're feeling strapped with their budget. And then they hear messages like, only buy organic this, or only buy such and such that. And I will tell you that Sophia and I typically tell people, and I maybe it sounds like I need to be corrected a little bit, but that I usually start at the top of the food chain and say, if I'm going to purchase a higher quality something, I'm going to purchase it at that top of the food chain. I'm going to get the higher quality beef. I'm going to get something grass-fed and finished. And then I'm a little bit less, concerned when I'm talking about the fruits and the vegetables, unless they're on the dirty dozen list. Like, I guess I tend to think that way. Is that different than how you would recommend it to people?
Yes. So again,
so challenge me. Because we should be having conversations about this.
Yep. So, here's what I'll say. I have eaten a grain finished animal my entire life. There have been studies that have looked at the component, I guess, overall amount at the end of the life cycle of an animal. And in a grain finished animal, that grain made up about 7% of their total diet. So you're talking very, very small percentage. And maybe this is actually what I should have talked about at the beginning that may surprise people when it comes to the beef industry. But I think there's a lot of fear around a grain finished animal. Like, they're just, mowing down on corn on the cob, right? Like, it's just a very unhealthy animal.
Or one documentary said that they were being fed candy.
Yeah, Skittles. We've actually covered that on the podcast. If you guys want to tune into that, we brought on a rancher there was a Wagyu reel that went absolutely insanely viral. Someone was talking about how Wagyu beef is really bad beef, and we brought on a Wagyu rancher to talk about it. But a grass finished cow and a grain finished cow, all that animal spends about 2/3 of its life looking exactly the same way, which is on a ranch like mine and my husband's, where the animal is out at pasture on grass. So they got milk and grass or some sort of forage, hay, some sort of grass forage for 2/3 of their life. Exactly the same, whether it was grass fed finished or grain finished. That beginning part looks exactly the same. The difference is in the last 4 to 6 months. So a grass-finished, grass-fed, grass-finished animal will continue for the end of their life cycle, only getting, again, that grass. And that doesn't necessarily mean it was out of pasture. You could have an animal that is inside in confinement that is being fed hay or some sort of forage, and that is considered grass-fed, grass-finished, because that label is only a diet label. It is not like an environmental label. I think a lot of people means it's like the animal lived entirely at pasture. And you're like, no, they could be in a feedlot system. They could be in a confinement system. As long as they're getting the grass forage, that's what grass-finished is telling you, that their entire life they only ate grass. The grain finished animal, the last 4 to 6 months of their life is where we introduce that grain into their diet. But it's not solely just grain. They are still getting a grass. They're still getting a hay. They're getting other micronutrients that they need. We actually have nutritionists in the animal industry that tell us what we need to be feeding our animals. So they're going through and getting a specific nutritional diet at the end of their life. So I guess I say that all of that to say that I don't put my money towards a grass-fed, grass-finished, pasture-raised animal because I have again seen with my own eyes, cared for, and consumed a grain-finished animal my entire life. And in my opinion, there are differences between them, but in my opinion, when it comes to especially a nutritional standpoint, at welfare, caring for the animal standpoint, there just isn't enough for me to ever be pushed over into you have to buy grass finished beef. So whenever I see, an influencer touting that it has to be grass finished beef, I just do not subscribe to that. The other question when it comes to fruits and vegetables, Tara and I have had this conversation quite a bit, and it also comes to kind of the organic conversation, is I think the other thing that people really care about, again, spending their money for something extra that feels safer to them is probably chemicals and glyphosate, right? Like that is kind of the hot buzzword right now, is glyphosate is killing us all and it is terrible for us all. And I will try and keep it brief. I will start this by saying we actually did a 3-part series on our podcast. Again, interviews. We felt like it was something that we either talked about in articles enough or we're getting questions from our listeners enough that we were like, okay, we're going to devote airtime to an interviewing. And we really, again, we stand for food choice and we stand for truth. So, be informed so that you're not influenced. And so we said, if we're going to talk about glyphosate, while we had, kind of our own preconceived notions of it and opinions of it, we said it's very, very important to us that we have a balanced conversation. So we're going to be bringing on a leading expert that is anti-glyphosate, that has written books and goes on other podcasts and says, glyphosate is killing us all. We need to stop it. We're going to bring her on the podcast and we're going to interview her and we're going to give her an hour time to present, the emotional conversation of that and the scientific conversation of what that looks like for glyphosate in the environment and in our diets and our health. And then we said, we're bringing on the opposite. We're bringing on kind of a leading expert who has been known to be very pro glyphosate and states that scientifically the numbers are not there to show that it is doing any damage to us. We're going to have a separate interview with him and we're going to give him an hour to have that conversation. And then afterwards, we're going to come together and we're going to say, now this is what we think for an entire hour and discuss what Stephanie said and what Kevin said and kind of our opinions from that. And I just, after having some of that conversation and again, being on farms and ranches, I don't hold the same fear with glyphosate being used as a chemical tool in the agriculture industry that I think a lot of other people have. And so I do not put my dollars towards like organic or avoiding glyphosate chemical sprayed fruits and vegetables, because even organic is sprayed with chemicals. It's just organic approved ones. And to my mind, I just don't understand how someone would trust an agency to okay a natural chemical, but not trust an agency to okay, a different, either way you have to have, the toxicity levels, right? Like you're trusting an agency to approve a chemical either way. And so I can't ever just grasp at how like one agency would be okay one chemical and not the other. So I trust the current, I think I'm not against and this is what I said actually in the glyphosate conversation. I said, I'm like, science is meant to be tested and pushed. So I'm never against if a new study comes out where rats or, an animal study comes out where it shows that like glyphosate is impacting in this way. Or maybe even looking at like the threshold, like what is the EPA setting that toxic level at, that okay level at, like, does that need to be lowered? Are we doing long-term exposure studies? Like, I think that's one area I wish I would see more studies come out with the glyphosate exposures. A lot of them are like in acute exposure or like, single dose. And it's like, well, what does long-term look at? Like, what does it look like when we're eating, 30 years of this in our diet, et cetera? So I'm never like so set in an opinion because that's what science is. It's meant to test and push. But like right now, my opinion is I just don't pay any of those extra dollars. Because I have friends who use glyphosate and spray it, and they would say that that's the safest chemical they want to handle. Like if they had to go to other chemicals on to spray in their fields, they would be more concerned about handling, caring for, and spraying other chemicals than they are with glyphosate. And so I think that like personal experience and then having some of that scientific conversation where the numbers show, I just don't put any of that extra dollars to my food in the grocery store.
It's interesting because it makes me think about, and I think having your background in pharmacy brings a really nuanced perspective to the conversation, because very often people expect me to vote for like a food-based supplement, like get the mega foods, food-based prenatal because it's made from food and thus is superior. And oftentimes I'm actually saying, not always. Actually, like the form of iron you're going to get from the spinach or the beets is not going to help you as well as this other iron we can get. And so talking about not just what it is, but dosage levels and exposure levels, which is different with a chemical on a food versus dosage of a vitamin that we're trying to get you within a particular range to lower your miscarriage rate, et cetera. We're talking about two different things, but I think sometimes it is interesting to hear the actual opposite thing than you expect somebody to be really passionate about, and hearing that kind of nuanced perspective. So I want to appreciate you for that. And thank you for that perspective.
Yeah, thanks. I know it's not what everyone believes. And I just always encourage people to continue to do the research themselves so that they do feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Like if what I say, you're like, I don't think that's right, then just explore that and like look into that. I have all sorts of friends on the spectrum. I have vegan friends. I have vegetarian friends. I have friends who are so crunchy, the restrictions they have on their food in their households are completely different. But I just encourage people to do don't. You said, what would I say to someone? I'd be like, turn off your phone and stop listening to influencers.
Yeah.
And just do some of that research on your own again, so that you're making the decision for you and your household because you have done the research and you feel that way, not because someone else told you to.
It's also interesting, like let your research also be what your body is telling
Absolutely.
you. Like, do you eat a really quick carby breakfast and then need to take a nap at 10 a.m. because you don't feel energetic? And I'd be interested to hear your take on what surprised you about eating carnivore that had some benefits, because most of the people that I know that have done it have seen like energy benefits and focus benefits and sleeping a little bit better benefits. And it's like, well, that's interesting because it's very rich in B vitamins and your blood sugar is super stable on this mode of eating. And so maybe you could get those same benefits from pursuing a eating style that highlights those things without having to feel so rigid and unsustainable and kind of put in a box. It also isn't to say that you couldn't eat, eggs and ground beef as your breakfast going on, and maybe you eat a regular lunch and dinner with your family. It doesn't need to be mutually exclusive, but a lot of times I think the research needs to be not just the phone and Google Scholar, but somebody told me it would probably be really great to eat more brightly colored fruits and vegetables. I'm going to actually try that and see how I feel, see how my energy is, see if my luteal phase lengthens because we're doing a lot more antioxidants. You might be surprised if you're willing to kind of expand in that sense and also rely on like the age-old wisdom, right? Like, what did your grandma teach you about eating healthy? I think sometimes we've strayed so far from just what makes sense and what we've seen work for generations, that the extremism becomes really sexy.
Yep. So when I had the conversation with the carnivore doctor, it was interesting because going into that conversation, I had said that, for me, I just haven't seen anything drastically different for myself with carnivore. To your point, we've said kind of couple different times now in the conversation, there are people that are really struggling with like skin imbalances. There are people who are really struggling with like gut problems, right? Like inflammation, arthritis, like there's all sorts of different ailments people have that they are curing with food. And I did not go into this carnivore diet as one of those people, right? So again, our household is not perfect by any means, but I definitely grew up in a household. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. I always say that she was like normal Maha before Maha existed. Like she grilled, not grilled, milled our own grain. She always made homemade bread. Like I remember, like it was my dream to like have a Lunchable, and I could not, like I just grew up. I grew up in a home where like food, it wasn't crazy restricted. Like I was never taught to count calories or anything crazy as a female, which I really like condone my mother, applaud her for. So it wasn't like an unhealthy focus on food, but it was definitely like a household where food was like, we gathered around the table every night. We ate meals every night as a family, and it was always a home cooked meal. Like again, rural community. My mom couldn't even probably have gotten, a to-go dinner if she wanted to. So I grew up on like healthy food from our garden, that was a home cooked meal and just kind of like a healthy relationship food. And so I kind of brought that into like my household with my family, right? Like I'm not crazy. If my kids want to get a sugary cereal every once in a while, I'll like let them pick out the sugary cereal at the grocery store. Like my kid will get a fruit roll up in his lunch sometimes. Like we don't have these crazy restrictions, but for the most part, like our kids are, we're sitting down, we're having a family meal that has a focus on animal protein, and for the most part, like fairly healthy sides, right? So I went into this carnivore diet with what, in my opinion, was like better than, the standard American diet. I didn't have any ailments with my body. And so I was telling him, I was like, yeah, I just haven't like super seen anything like crazy drastic to make me feel better, or that like this has like cured me or done anything crazy to my body. And then we kept talking and we kept having more conversation, and he was talking about his journey with carnivore. And he was talking about how he was a professional athlete and he was doing high performance, training. And when he was on the carnivore diet, he just noticed like athletic ability much, much, much more higher, stamina, energy, etc. And it kind of clicked for me, because at the same time that I started the carnivore journey, I started training for a half marathon too. And the entire time that I've been training, I kept thinking, my gosh, like this should not be this easy for me. Like I used to run a lot in my 20s, but I definitely like with my babies took off time, have always struggled ever since. Even, my youngest is now 4, almost 5. I've always struggled getting back into like the rhythm of going to the gym, of like consistency from like a workout standpoint. Like every once in a while you'll catch me at the gym. Every once in a while you catch me running because like, physical, I just was with an athlete. Like it's been a part of my life, but nothing consistent, nothing major. And so I was like, gosh, this training should not be good. Like I had gone for my long run that week before I interviewed him, and it was the 6 mile. And when my husband picked me up, I was like, man, I feel so good. I was like, I could probably have gone like, honestly, probably to 8 or 9 miles. Like I just felt really good and strong. And as I was talking to him, it totally clicked that I do think having the carnivore base is what is allowing me to, and that's why I'm honestly still on it. And I say carnivore-ish because I have like let go of some of that restriction and involved some fruits and vegetables and just random things. But for the remaining of my training, I'm going to stay mostly carnivore because I really do think that it has provided me, for whatever reason, whatever I need to train my body at this level. Like my body is functioning. So it's kind of a convoluted answer when I say like, I think there are pros to carnivore. It isn't that I like cured this or I feel better, XYZ. But I do think it is obviously doing something really good for my body to allow me to train as much as I've been training and honestly feel pretty good doing it. And then the last thing I'll say, because I know I'm kind of rambling, but to your point, I have also been sleeping better. And I know it's because I've removed sugar from the diet. And to your point of maybe you can have some of those benefits without all the restrictions. When I am done with this, half marathon training and kind of, carnivore-ish, like we're ranchers, right? Like my freezer is full
Right.
of
You're
meat.
going to
Like
eat
we
a lot
eat
of meat, right?
Yeah. So I'll always be carnivore-ish, but I know that in order for me to get good sleep, it is sugar that affects me. I can, whatever it is, the amount of sugar I had, and I figured that out actually when my husband and we tried Whole30 once. And I was like, gosh, I'm just sleeping so good. And then I couldn't figure out why. And then we went off and I totally figured out, I think it was actually through Lent. One time I gave up candy with Lent and I was like, it is sugar. Sugar is what is impacting me the most. Like that is what I don't need to pay attention to carbs. I don't need to pay attention to like all the other things we can hyper obsess over when it comes to diet and what we need to be eating. And again, like the chips, the cookies, whatever it is, sugar that really, really affects me. And so I know I've been also feeling good because like a lot of the sugar has been removed from my diet for carnivore too.
Okay, totally personal note to end on. Do you think you are particularly attracted to like a hunky rancher man because that's what you grew up around? And Tara, the same. You both were like going off doing different things, and then you ended up back on, home
Yep.
on the range.
It is so funny. Because I just really never thought I'd marry a rancher. But yeah, I love this lifestyle. I love how much time we spend outdoors. I love the way our children are with us all the time. Like there are things as an adult now that I recognize about the lifestyle of being a farmer or rancher that are very conducive, and very different than raising a family and being married in the city. You know, my husband and I both have very unconventional jobs. I still fill in as a pharmacist actually at our little local pharmacy. So sometimes I leave the ranch. But for the most part, him and I spend like all day together, which some marriages do not like to do. But I feel so blessed that, we get to wake up and I get to see him at any time of the day. He can pop into the house, or any time of the day, me and my youngest is still at home, but my other kids are in school. But Rue and I can go out and chore with him, or there's just this fluidity in our life, and nature in our life. I really do love outdoors, and how much the outdoors are a part of our every single day, not just 5 to 9 when you get off of work. So yeah, I think there was something there about, as much as when I first met him, I was like, man, I do not want to be a rancher's wife, because there's a lot of really hard things about our lifestyle too. But I think, at the end, it probably did draw me back. I think agriculture puts roots into you, that you don't realize how deep they go until you kind of leave it and learn to appreciate it in hindsight 2020.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I have a couple clients right now who they're in agriculture in some way or another, either themselves or their family. And there is like this whole, I don't even want to say like just ecosystem. There's a huge culture around it that's very homey. And just hearing you also talk about just being outdoors and the natural rhythms of our body, we're really in tune with that. We were designed for that much more than we were to sit by this computer. And as much as I love technology and being able to communicate with someone a state away and this go to people all over the world, being outside and being connected to nature is really powerful. And it makes me feel kind of privileged in the sense that somebody who's growing my food gets that privilege, even if I don't completely. So maybe that's one of there is hard, but that's a beautiful side of it too. So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for being indoors with me today.
Oh, I know. It's funny. I look back when I was practicing as a full-time pharmacist, and I'm like, wow, how did I did 410s. I actually worked in a hospital and did 312s too. And I gosh, like, it's just what I knew then, but looking back now, I was like, I would go bonkers if I had to be on that full-time shift again. And obviously that's very, again, privileged perspective. I feel grateful that my husband and I have carved out this lifestyle that works for me, not to have to do that full time anymore. But
Mhm.
looking back, I was like, it didn't even faze me when I did it. But now I'm like, there is just no way I could do that anymore. Yeah, no
Mhm.
way. It'd be too hard on me, I think.
And I think that is, if you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I'm stuck in that kind of a job, it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Absolutely.
You can build lifestyle behaviors around trying to get in nature, which whether it's exercise or sitting and journaling and getting sunlight in your eyes in the morning, or the end of the day, instead of scrolling on your phone on the couch next to your partner, like go outside and make a cup of tea and just enjoy the sound of the birds. Like there is something to it that's really healing. And whether it can be your whole lifestyle or it can be a part of your everyday, it's worth working for some connection to it.
Yes.
And honestly, once you have children, they'll make sure you do. So that
Absolutely.
shift will happen at the end of this for you. Well, this was a privilege, Natalie. Thank you for taking the time to come on with us. Would you spend a minute just telling people where they can find you and how they can engage with your work.
Yes. Well, thank you for letting me yap. Obviously, as podcasters, you put a mic in front of us and we can just go on a whole roll. So, dear listener, thank you. If you're all the way here, thank you for sticking through. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You're obviously a podcast person. So, if you picked up anything today or our podcast sounds interesting to you, we would love it if you would hop over and follow us and listen to us on our podcast. Again, the name is Discover Ag. Our cover art is me and my co-host. We are in denim tuxedos, head to toe denim, and I'm holding a chicken and she's holding a hot dog. So when you see that image, you know you have found your new home for
the
fun.
right podcast.
Fun food conversations. And then beyond that, if you do want, I share on social media. So if you're interested in what it's like, to see beef grow, or you want to see rural Western living, Natalie Kovarik, very simple, just my name. So you can find me on a couple different platforms there.
Hey friends, we're taking a break from our episode to talk about one of our sponsors. And this sponsor is the PCOS app. Did you know that I made an app all about PCOS? Well, I did, and you can find so many resources in it. We have slowly moved all the resources from my PCOS Hormone Academy course over into the PCOS app, and that talks about all things PCOS topically. Like if you have acne, you can go look at the skin and acne modules and see, what does Western medicine offer? Why does this impact PCOS? What can we do about it? What are natural remedies? What are nutritional remedies? We talk about hair loss and hirsutism all through that lens, where we go through, what is it? Why is it impacted by PCOS? Or why do we need to pay more attention to this particular thing? And what can we do about it? And we provide a vast resource to help you both advocate for yourself at the doctor's office and treat yourself at home naturally. Now, the exciting thing that I want to share with you is, starting in January 2025, we're starting to migrate all of the content that I have published so far on fertility into this app. I used to sell a course for $700 all about how to get pregnant with PCOS, and that is all getting moved into the app between January and March. So you can take the course as if you enrolled in the whole thing for $10 per month. So head to your app store, whether you're on a Google Android device or an Apple device. If you type in PCOS app, you just look for that really pretty lavender flower, you'll find it. Download it and join us, because you're going to get weekly recipes and all the fertility focused PCOS content that you need. It will start being uploaded under the Academy tab. So stay tuned for that. And let's get back to our episode. Okay, well, you think it's simple. How do you spell your last
I know.
name?
My husband. I went from a very easy name, and we're actually in a huge Czech community, and so there's all these crazy consonant last names in my community. So Natalie, Natalie, and then Kovarik is Kovarik.
Okay, Arik. Well, thank you, Natalie. There's one last thing we have to do before we hop off, and I should have warned you, but we have a segment called Yagrel, where it's just you celebrate something. You can celebrate anything, little, big, personal, professional, maybe related to your marathon training, maybe related to kids being back in school and getting back into something. But if you want me to go first, I'm happy to.
Go first. I'm gonna do my half marathon, but you can go first.
Okay. I'm very excited. We are the happy new owners of a piano. I've been searching for a piano. We have a friend who's staying with us that's just an incredible pianist. And I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old getting super interested in instruments. And so I've been on the search for a good Facebook marketplace, free or inexpensive piano. And we found the best piano. It's a baby grand. It looks brand new. It is actually electric, which I know a lot of people are going to be like, I wish you hadn't done that. But as a mother with a almost 4-year-old, 6-year-old, and 8-year-old, they can plug headphones in and do their thing. And once they're better, or hours and hours of practicing, they don't necessarily have to have the headphones in. But it showed up yesterday, and yesterday there was so much piano going on. It was everything my heart wanted, and so happy because we've been on the hunt for a little while. So that's my Yagrel, is we have a new piano in the house.
I love that so much. Yeah,
new to us.
I grew up playing piano, so my mom put me in lessons when I was 4, and I played through part of high school. And I have made my sons do it as well. So you're talking to a fellow pianist enthusiast. I think music is so important. My oldest does not play anymore, but I just think it's so important for kids to develop that skill and read music. And my middle is, he started piano, but it's not his favorite. So we switched to violin. Like I'm just trying to find what fits for him.
Something.
Yeah. So I love that is becoming a part of your family. Your kids might fight you along the way, but one day they'll look back and they'll be grateful that you did that for them. My is gonna. I mean, it's super. Not anything out of the box. I've talked about it a couple different times on the podcast, but I'm gonna girl myself about just training for the half marathon. I'd been thinking about it for a while, and I don't really know what spurred me over the edge to finally just commit to it and do it. But we all know, as anyone tuning in, women, we are always pulled in so many directions, and sometimes it's hard. I have a friend who's like, "Gosh, I want to run one, but I just can't find the time." And I feel like that's something we tell ourselves all the time, like, when will I carve out that hour for me to work out, or the hour for me to run, or the hour for me to practice painting or calligraphy or whatever it is that's that, thing that we're being drawn to, but
soul giving,
feel, selfish, or like we don't have the time for ourselves. So I am just proud of myself for finally buckling down and committing and doing it. And
have you done one before?
In my 20s, I did a half marathon. So it's been over 12 years since I ran, probably 13, maybe even 14 years since I ran my last one. So proud of myself, going well. Everyone wish me luck that the rest of training and actual race day goes well too.
Did you pick a race and like you have a date you're working towards?
Yes. So I actually wanted to make it kind of fun. And my husband and I love to travel. So I kind of looked in different areas that we would want to travel to. We actually got married. My husband and his family has a cabin in Minnesota. So we got married up in the Minnesota area, Duluth area. And so I'm going to run a race in Duluth, and we're going to go spend the weekend at the cabin, see, he has a sister up there, see some family up there, and just have a nice, fun weekend too.
I love that. I did. My first half is actually a part of my diagnosis with the condition I have related to infertility, but I did one called the City to See, and it's part of the college town I went to. I went to an ag school in California at Cal Poly, and you run from like, did she? Yeah, you run from the city to the ocean and Pismo Beach, and it was so fun. And I remember how amazing I felt. Like I accomplished this thing I set out to do, and I have different exercise interests and goals at the moment, but I love a good like run or bike ride. Just the high I get from it feels so good. So I'm glad you're doing that for yourself. Yeah, girl.
Yeah, that's right.
That's very exciting. Yeah, girl. All right. Well, this has been delightful. I hope you have a great weekend. Listeners, thanks for tuning in. As always, you're going to hear your conversations about food and fertility. We're here in this with you. Make sure that you send this to a friend, especially if it's challenging something they believe about agriculture. I think it's always good to be challenged and have conversations and really kind of be more open to other perspectives than just shutting them down because they're different from you. I think that that's really important. And I'm definitely going to go check out your podcast. So this was delightful for me, and have a great week.